And welcome back, everyone. This hour, it is Big 12 football and beyond as we join you each and every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time to talk about the Big 12 and beyond, college football, football in general. We appreciate you joining us. A couple of reminders, as we like to do while everyone is finding us and joining us. If you're listening to this in podcast form, we really appreciate you doing that. And you can do that by signing up for Big 12 football and beyond. That way, you get notification when we're show is dropped, and you don't miss anything. And then we encourage you to join us live as we do the show live. You can participate, ask questions, um, and that's make the show a little bit more enjoyable. It's you get asked a lot of questions. It's the best way to get in, get your questions answered, and be part of the show. So we love your interaction, and we encourage you to do so. So appreciate that. Also, a reminder: if you're going to join us live, how do you do that? You can catch us on YouTube or Twitter Live. You can also go to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. Follow Chris on Twitch is where you can find us. and you can join us and sign up there. Very, very simple, very, very easy to do. So appreciate that. Reminder also that we do detailed film room breakdowns. Every conference. We do shows for all conferences. We provide the written content over at LandryFootball.com of all the detailed film room analysis of everything going on around the world of college football in our notebooks every day, as well as our film room breakdowns, our previews, and our reviews. So, what happened inside the film room is what we like to say and what we like to provide for you. And that's what you get at LandryFootball.com. So, sign up for our football season sale over at LandryFootball.com. Got a few things to get to today. We're going to talk. Are they any coaches inside the league that are in trouble? That potentially could be in trouble with their job security. We're going to maybe hit on that a little bit. And then we're going to get into all the games and all the game balls and kind of take you around the league. And we're going to talk about Oklahoma State's resurgence. Oklahoma State continues and moves on. Iowa State's improving. Baylor steady. Texas can't protect leads, but what does it look like over on the 40 acres? Is Oklahoma the only team inside the league that's a playoff caliber team? We'll address that, as well as hand out game balls and take a look at this past week's action, as well as look ahead to this week's action. And also another reminder that as we get into the coaching search time of year where LSU has got a opening, USC's had an opening. We've got Washington State that has an interim in a very, very difficult situation for those of you that listen to Pac 12 football and beyond. Last hour, we got into that. So there's going to be some openings. There's some others, Georgia Southern, UConn. There'll be many more that will open up by season's end. I'm going to take in the Landry Football Podcast behind the curtain of kind of how a coaching termination happens, how you move on from a coach, and we'll specifically get into some of what we've talked about in the LSU situation, how to handle a coaching search, some of the what goes on behind the scenes, and some of the misconceptions about how this plays out. It's comical when you hear and read some of the thoughts about how this stuff is done and who they're going to call, and it is nothing like what you think it is because people that are writing about it have never been in a coaching search. I have I don't know if it's fortunate or not, maybe unfortunate, is a big part of my consulting business is coaching search work. It's mainly evaluation of coaches, but there have been times where I have been drug into feeling out. And the one thing that I'll get into in the show today is about how you really find out. You've got to know both sides in order to really know what's going on. Like two sides to a story, there's usually three or four sides to a story, and getting all other sides are really pivotal. But when you do this, I'm involved in coaching search work every year. Think about it. An athletic director, at least from a football standpoint, he may at most get 2 chances at that. Unless he's a guy that's moved around and been an athletic director a few places. Maybe he's hired 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, I'm involved in this process many times over, double-digit times a year. Now, I'm not actually doing the hiring. I'm not offering the money. That's a different situation, and it's the most important one, by the way. But that's what I not what I am, not what I do, but certainly giving a perspective. So we're going to get into that on the Landry Football Podcast today at 5 p.m. Central Time. So make sure that you check that out. At 3 p.m. today, I'll do a little Alabama film room with Ryan Fowler. So Oklahoma, if you're kind of taking a look at, if you look at the whole process of the storylines of I think the Big 12 this year, and certainly in the past couple of weeks, and we'll get to your questions and comments in the chat room. A little later in the show. Appreciate you joining. I see the Bracket One has joined us. Thank you so much, and we encourage everyone to join us. The Caleb Williams story is clearly this Oklahoma offense looks quite a bit different with Caleb Williams in charge. He was outstanding against TCU. He's got some big playability that, um, just outstanding. And I think that there is a lot going on there with the ability to employ him in the run game, and his ability with the run game success allows greater spacing in coverage, which gives them a dimension, quite frankly, on offense that they have not had with Spencer Rattler. Team is kind of galvanized around it. I'm curious to see how good this offense can be and how well it affects the defense. But that is clearly the story, and it was the story this past week against TCU. They played very well, and they did a really good job. I think we need to at least acknowledge and begin to talk more and more about Oklahoma State. I don't see them as a team that's going to beat Oklahoma at the end of the year, but let's not discuss that right now. Let's talk about what they've done. And I've mentioned his name before, but Jim Knowles, the outstanding defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, is really doing a fantastic job. He is someone that's really implemented, and I think a guy that should be on the short list of big-time defensive coordinator hires. For example, if I were Dan Mullen at Florida, I'd put up a lot of money and get Jim Knowles. What he's been able to do with that Oklahoma State defense, he's been able to be very, very crafty. They're really, really good. I think they do a good job with their scheme. I think they play good situational football, and this is not an Oklahoma State team that you may remember that throws it around a bunch and is explosive. They play good at the line of scrimmage. They're built around the defense and the run game. I think that's really been impressive. And this Oklahoma State team is good. There's no question. They get another test this week against Iowa State. I think the more look the mantra is the bigger the win, the bigger the next game is. And for Oklahoma State, when you beat Texas, that's big. When you beat Baylor, that's big. They had a Kansas State win, but then Baylor was a good win. Texas is a good win. Iowa State, who has quietly played better and better on their end, would be a great win. And I'm very curious to see how that plays out because that would elicit a big win. Then Kansas, West Virginia, TCU, Texas Tech, they've got a chance with this win. And again, they've got a really good chance, either unbeaten or one loss, before they go into play Oklahoma at the end of the year. This is going to be a tough game, and I'm going to be breaking this game down specifically. I break all the Big 12 games down, all the games in college football by conference down each and every week. We'll have that for you. But we'll have this as a special featured game. I think it's the premier game of the weekend type effect. I mean, look, let's call it what it is. I think it says a lot, and I don't think either one of these teams are going to the playoffs or anything like that. And anytime you have a team that is close to being playoff favorite or bound, if they get in a close game, that can become the great game of the weekend. But going into it, this game speaks an awful lot. Iowa State, they're starting developmental programs get better as the year goes along. You can look at the early stumbles that Iowa State had. The loss at Iowa is something that's a good Iowa team that was fully strengthened. They struggle with Iowa. The Baylor loss on the road was intriguing, and we see how good a job Baylor's done. And that says an awful lot, too, about Baylor. But this Iowa State team's starting to play a lot better, and don't discount them being at least a factor in the Big 12 race. I'm not saying winning it, but certainly have an impact of who can have a chance to win it. They are playing very well. They were very impressive against Kansas State last week. Matt Campbell in October is 15-2, dating back to 2017, and they've beaten teams ranked 3rd, 4th, 6th, 18th, 25th. And if you want to add to the storyline of this, who have the two losses been to? Oklahoma State, who comes in and is the next ranked team. So Iowa State beats ranked teams, which Oklahoma State now is, but they've struggled with Oklahoma State in the past. So something's got to give there. I think that is a huge, huge storyline for the entire season, but certainly for this week's matchup. Baylor, 6-1 overall, 3-1 in conference play. Impressive win, 38-24 over BYU in Waco. Aranda's done a good job. Being in the race is impressive. I think that we're seeing his name getting mentioned a little early. Timing may not be right, but, I think this is going to get Dave some leverage in a race here. His name is definitely on the we know about, we want to talk, we want to see some other people and how things may play out, but Dave Aranda is a person of interest in the LSU job. It's one of those things, the right opportunity. I think Dave's a fast-track guy. But like other coaches that have been impressive in a short stint, let's see him do it over a longer period of time. A little bit of an unknown. Timing is everything, and we'll see. Texas is the next thing I wanted to address, as they, despite the fact that they've blown leads, and despite the fact that they may have caught the ire of their fan base and the media there, I actually see positives for Texas. I need to see more depth and versatility of talent on defense. I think as good as Pete Kawakasi is as a defensive coordinator, I think probably the thing that we need to look out for is how he's able to really adjust a little bit. I don't see quite the adjustments that you'd like to see, but I also wonder if a little bit of it is lack of depth. I also think offensively, got to be able to run the football, got to be able to maybe finish a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball. They take a week off before huge games against Baylor and Iowa State. Now, Texas is not in the Big 12 race, but by the mere fact that they're playing Baylor and Iowa State, they can affect And I know playing Sparler is not what they expect on the 40 acres. It's what you got this year. And winning those games would show a positive step. I thought they had a good chance of beating Oklahoma State, and they did. They couldn't finish. Gives them a little time to examine it. They're on the cusp. They're close. Got to figure out how to finish. And that comes in a couple of ways, right? It comes in how you're able to finish offensively, sustain drives, finish on offense, and then defensively. I think you've got to be able to match up a little bit more defensively in critical moments that they've been able to do. So I think that that is something that we need to look at. Game balls this week, guys that stood out. I got to go to Oklahoma State. The duo of Jason Taylor, the defensive end, and Jalen Warren, the newcomer, along with Caleb Williams and Andrew Mevis at special teams, really was the key. Williams, the first true freshman to start a game at quarterback since 1990, just the fifth overall. Great job for them. We've talked a lot about him. Taylor returned a second quarter interception, 85 yards for a touchdown with when Texas holding a 17-3 advantage. He was a big playmaker and a big in the turnaround for Oklahoma State. It's the third touchdown of Taylor's career. Really good there. Mevis scored 14 of Iowa State's points in the 33-20 win. Really good field goal kicker. Warren is rushed. Jalen Warren has been an outstanding running back that we've talked about. Rushed 33 times for 193 yards in Oklahoma State's win over Texas. That's how they're getting it done. Running the football and playing good defense. So Caleb Williams, Jason Taylor, Andrew Mevis of Iowa State, the kicker, and Jalen Warren, the impressive performance of the week, the game balls. What does the league look like right now and stacking them up? It's pretty easy. We'll start from bottom to top. It's clear that Kansas brings up the rear of this league right now and has been for a while, but we're talking right now. I thought the best chance for Kansas to win a conference game, and you never know, but personnel-wise, probably was this last week. They lost to Texas Tech by 27 at home. And they got Oklahoma, they got Oklahoma State, they get Kansas State. They got Oklahoma coming. It's a mess. West Virginia's really slipped. They're 0-3, they're 2-4 overall. They're the 3-game losing streak. They need a win. They go to TCU. They're in a world of hurt right now. They're not playing good football. Offensively, they don't have a lot of answers. That's been disappointing. And defensively, they've fallen off a little bit. That was the strength, and it's just not a real strong part of their team. It's the best of the units. It's just not been real productive. Texas Tech, they were able to get it done. I think losses like if they had lost last week to Kansas could spell doom for Matt Wells, and we'll get into that in a second. He thinks he might survive another year, but it's going to be a rough stretch. People thought it were going to be an improved team. I don't know how you really look at that roster and think that. The 2 losses that Tech has had this year have been blowout losses to teams that are notably better. So, I think that they could. Saturday against Kansas State's telling. Really, if you look at it, the problem that he's going to have is that Oklahoma bye week, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor. You probably are looking at the last realistic chance of winning this week if you're Texas Tech. So it's one of the concerns that I have in terms of Matt Wells' future. Then I'd put Kansas State in that moving up the ladder, and I would say the same thing about K-State. They've got TCU, which is winnable. Kansas, definitely winnable. West Virginia, winnable. They've got 3 winnable games, 2 definitely games they should win. Um, excuse me, 3. If you look at Texas, 2, Kansas and West Virginia, and I think the next 2 weeks, Texas Tech and TCU are kind of going to determine their season because I don't like their chances at this point against Baylor or at Texas, but it's doable. The program's in pretty good shape, uh, but they opened up 3-0, and people got really excited. But they're not as good as Oklahoma State this year. I don't think they're as good as Iowa State. They're going to get looked at and be, measured up against. Well, Baylor's done a better job, and Iowa. Just those things start to catch up with you. But I think Chris is fine. I think they've been battle tested, but I don't know how many they've got. I think 4 games that they could win, 2 that are definitely wins they should have, and then other 2 that we'll see. For TCU, Max Duggan and crew suffered a big loss. Wasn't particularly close against Oklahoma, not as close as the score would indicate. This has been a disappointing team. I thought this TCU team would be a little bit better. Now, going up the ladder, I think this Texas team has looked little bit better on film when I look at them. But as always is the case, people overreact. Well, they have a couple of wins. It looks really good. It's impressive. They do look good. It is impressive. But you see some of the issues not being able to finish. I can see that, okay, they're not going to win 10 games, and that's a standard. I get that. I think we start to have those conversations next year and the year after. I think it's rebuilding. I like the attitude. I like the tempo. I just don't think they know this team well enough, and I don't think this team is overall good enough to take that next step. Then we get up into the programs that are really getting it done. Iowa State's playing better. After a rocky start, they're starting to get better into shape. They've won 2 straight games in league play and in impressive fashion. Brock Purdy's starting to play well. Oklahoma State game, really big. This says an awful lot. Baylor, playing well also. Already bowl eligible. 14-point win over BYU, a nice win. Can make a statement. They got Texas and, coming up on the 30th. That'll be big for them. Be big for Texas as well. Says an awful lot. And then, of course, Oklahoma State. We know they're unbeaten. They're playing well. They got the nice win we just talked about. And we'll see what they can do against Iowa State. I think that's a big game in that league. And then, of course, it's Oklahoma. Oklahoma is with Caleb Williams, looks like a different team. And I do think that they're the only team inside the league that can make the playoffs. I think they're the only team that's playoff caliber. I don't see anybody because I don't. Obviously, Oklahoma State, if they were to win out, they'd get in. I'm not saying that. They don't look like a playoff caliber team, so I don't think they're going to be able to do that. Um, Getting into the matchups again, kind of recapping things. Oklahoma State. Look, when I looked at Oklahoma State and Texas, that was a little bit closer game than you might think. Texas is averaging over 40 points a game. But I really thought that Jim Knowles did a really good job, had a really good game plan, and one that was, challenging for Texas's defense to get off the field. To hold Texas to 24 points was pretty impressive. Um, that's the really key that I look at for Oklahoma State is their run game and their defense, and for Texas, their inability to finish out games defensively is my takeaway from the film of those teams. Baylor, much like Baylor did 2 great things. They ran the football well, played good defense. They are not really good against the pass. People that can throw the football on them are going to give them trouble. I think Oklahoma, for example, but they can defend the run pretty well. They're really sound with their run fits. Very good-looking team. They really did a good job against BYU. We mentioned Tech against Kansas. There's not a whole lot. It was a dominant performance. They rushed the football well. Kansas can't stop you. It's for Kansas's standpoint. A lot of work for Lance Leipold to do. A lot of work there. Iowa State playing well. They really took it to Kansas State. Brock Purdy had a great game. They sustained drives. They converted 5 third downs on one drive. Very, very impressive. The defense is continuing to play well. The defense played well all year long. I mentioned Andrew Mevis was outstanding, 4 for 4 in field goals, was a huge difference. For K-State, look, they dug themselves a hole early. They never got back in the game. If you got to get away from Deuce Vaughn in the ground game, you're not going to be as good. The defense is not as good as, say, Iowa State's. They struggled to get off the field, particularly on third down. Iowa State was 9 for 15 on third downs, and the defense got worn out. Simple as that. For Oklahoma TCU, we've talked about it. It was Caleb Williams and the explosive plays, the 5 touchdowns he was responsible for. Unbelievable. Now, the defense is still got some issues tackling-wise. I don't think they're good enough to do damage in the playoffs, but they still have a ways to go. And for TCU, finally, I can't put this really more on the offense. I thought Duggan played well. Quentin Johnson did some good things offensively. They gave up over 225 yards on the ground, and they let Caleb Williams kill them. It was a defensive performance that killed TCU in this game. So that's kind of how it played out in this week's action over. As far as coaching issues, there are 2 that I'm keeping my eye out on. I'm curious to see if Matt Wells struggles down the stretch, because I think there's a scenario where if he loses to Kansas State, they could lose the rest of their games: Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. And that could be very difficult for him to survive. We'll see. He may get another year, but it would help him if he were able to win a game like this. And then I think we need to see if Matt Campbell is interested in moving now. We know the whole Big 12 landscape has changed. It depends on what opportunities come about. But those are the 2 that I'm paying most attention to. And as far as this week, again, the focus to me is on Oklahoma State, Iowa State. But Oklahoma does go to Kansas. K-State goes to Texas Tech, and which is a big matchup for the coaches. And then West Virginia, TCU, which is another one. Real quick before we call it a show, the Broke One says, hello, how are you doing? And so you were a big guy in the football thing, man. I don't know about that, but we appreciate you joining us, and we encourage everybody to join us here as we do the show live. Go to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football and join us as we do these shows live, and bring your questions and thoughts. We'll get to them. Also, a reminder to check out LandryFootball.com for all the film room breakdowns, all the inside news and notes on college football, the NFL. We got it all for you there. Sign up for Big 12 football and beyond. That's how we know that you like it and you'd like for us to continue to do it. So we appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk to you a little bit later today. Landry Football Podcast says 5 p.m. Central. Till then, we'll talk to you next time, everybody.